Hi, I'm Rosemary J. Kind, and today I'm going to read to you from Chapter 1 of New York Orphan. For more information about this and my other books, please visit my website, www.rjkind.com. You can also download the prequel to the Flynn and Reilly series, The Blight and the Blarney, absolutely free. New York Orphan, Chapter 1. Daniel Flynn looked around the magnificent warehouses, grown tall around the dock. They must have been higher than the trees around Loch Lean, higher than he could have imagined until he saw them. Whilst they displayed a majesty all their own, they shared none of the sweet meadow smell. Daniel found the noise and bustle oppressive. He swallowed hard. He had no idea what to do. He was 7 years old, and arriving in a strange land alone. He shuddered. He was used to the single-storey, tumble-down cottages scattered around the lanes, not these huge buildings of brick and timber, piled ramshackle as far as his eyes could see. "You fetid lumps of bog rot, go back to where you came from." A man in plaid trousers and a bright, well-tailored jacket, with an accent as alien as the buildings, hurled insults to the hundreds of starving Irish family as they descended from the ship. Shoulders dropped, Daniel drew his rag-wrapped belongings closer to the tiny frame of his beleaguered body. He walked a few faltering steps before looking back at the open expanse of rigging against the cloudless sky. The view belied the cramped conditions he'd suffered below deck. Then, with his head bowed, he moved forward onto the quay. Through the gaps in the planking, he could see excrement floating on the surface of the water, while the stench of rotting life filled the air. He was immune to the smell. Rot had dogged his life so far. You'd go a long way to find a worse odour than the fields of rotting potatoes, black-stalked and grey-slimed, decayed with blight, which marked the early years of his life. After that, it was disease which filled the air. He thought setting sail for America would mean fresh sea air to breathe, but he reckoned without conditions on board ship. 7 weeks of waste, seasickness and death had left him wishing he were back amongst the yellow-flowered fields of Killarney, where he had loved to wander, escaping from the decay. A dark-suited man with a neat-trimmed but extensive beard approached him. "Bread, soup, and make sure your mammy and daddy vote for Kelly." Daniel readily took the offered food, hoping his luck was starting to change. "Move along, young man." "Please, sir, I ain't got no mammy and daddy no more." Daniel looked up with pleading eyes into the kindly face. But the politician transferred his insincere benevolence to the next person coming off the boat, and the next, onward down the line of hungry, destitute countrymen from Cork and Kerry. It wasn't supposed to be this way. He was accustomed to the hunger. God knew he'd felt it long enough. He savoured the soup as he dipped the bread and drank the sops. He ate quickly, eyes darting around lest someone should take it from him. Compared to the last few weeks, the food was fit for a king. He imagined his Uncle Seamus wagering that not many kings ventured onto the wharf. Uncle Seamus would have wagered on the date of his own wake, if he'd had anything left to wager with. For a moment Daniel almost smiled, until he remembered how far away his uncle was now. They'd left the dockside of Cork a hopeful family, having journeyed from their native Killarney, desperate to find a better life. That's what his da had said. A land of opportunity was what the great Michael Flynn told his wife and son. Their landlord helped with the passage. He was a generous man whose land could no longer support them. "Now don't you go forgetting the goodness of Mr. O'Connor there, Daniel. Don't you go forgetting." His da was insistent they show what gratitude they could when so many of their neighbours were left to the mercy of the poorhouse. forced to give up what little land they had in their desperate need of arms. With both of his parents dispatched to watery graves, New York was now an opportunity Daniel Flynn faced alone. Weakened by years of famine, his ma and da hadn't the strength to overcome seasickness and the diseases on board ship. Within 5 days of each other they died, while he watched in helpless horror. First his mother, and then his broken-hearted father, lost without his childhood sweetheart, were taken from him, leaving Daniel with no one to rely on but himself. Back home there'd have been family to take him in, but not here. It would have been a starving family, but it was family nonetheless. On board ship it was every man, woman and child for themselves, and with barely enough to feed their own families, no one was going to give preference to someone else's boy. He took a deep breath, blinking back the tears, and did the only thing he'd been able to sustain himself with over the last days and nights, singing the ballads of home that his father had sung. He sat on a wooden crate, closed his eyes, and sang, imagining his da might be there to hear him, and wishing it were so. Daniel's nasal intonation mimicked his father's to perfection, but he possessed no more idea of where Kilmore was than of the layout of New York. As he sang the beautiful words of his homeland, he clung to his small bundle of belongings, barely aware of the crowd gathering around him, or the half-pennies and pennies being thrown at his feet. For a few precious moments, Daniel could believe he was back in Ireland with his family, with his father singing and his Uncle Patrick's fingers dancing their own jig across the strings of his fiddle. It was only when the suited figure's voice broke over the music to move the crowd along that Daniel once more became aware of his surroundings and of a scruffy figure, lanky for his young age, scooping up the coins in front of him. Daniel sized him up, probably a year or two more than he was, but with a streetwise edge which to Daniel made him seem older. "Ain't you going to stop me? I'm easy to spot with this mop." The boy laughed, pointing to his flame-red corkscrew curls, defying control under his weather-beaten hat. "Stop you what?" Daniel asked, wide-eyed. "Nicking your money." "What money? I don't have any money." "You're good, you are." "What money?" "I don't have any money." "I likes that. Folks liked your singing. I guess it reminded them of home. What others do you know?" "All the ones my da used to sing." "I'm Tom," said the boy, holding the coins out in his hand to Daniel. "And these, I believe, are yours." Daniel blinked, taking the coins from Tom's hand and looking at their strangeness. He closed his fist around the money and held tight. "Tom." "Thomas H. Reilly, pickpocket extraordinaire at your service." Tom stood, took a sweeping bow, and then opened his hand to reveal a pocket watch, a locket, and a pair of gold cufflinks. "That little crowd you drew proved quite good pickings. It don't cost me much to let you have the coins they threw. We should do it again sometime. Maybe not on the waterfront where we're likely to be seen, though. Where are you staying?" Daniel bit his lip and shrugged. "I dunno. I don't rightly know anything, except I'm Daniel Flynn from Killarney." He smiled as he thrust his hand out to shake Tom's hand, and waited while Tom put his treasure store back in his pocket before he could reciprocate. A feeling of relief flooded through Daniel for the first time in 3 weeks. He didn't feel completely alone. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this reading from New York Orphan and that you enjoy reading the rest of the book. Please, when you've read the book, do leave reviews. Reviews really do help new readers to find an author's work. Thank you.